You know exactly what you want to say. In your head, the argument is flawless, the vocabulary is sharp. But the moment you open your mouth, the voice that comes out is thin, hesitant, and entirely unconvincing. Standard advice tells you to speak from the diaphragm or project your voice. Trying to muscle your way to a better performance rarely works because it treats the problem like a simple mechanical failure of the lungs or throat. The disconnect stems from a literal interception. Somewhere in the milliseconds between your brain initiating a thought and your vocal cords vibrating, the physical output is being actively sabotaged. The human voice operates as a highly sensitive, multi-tiered sensory surveillance network. As long as we think of speaking purely as an outgoing megaphone, we remain completely blind to the actual crime scene, the internal sensory loops actively monitoring every syllable we produce. To understand this surveillance system, we trace the biological wiretap. Every time you vocalize, peripheral sensors instantly report back to the central nervous system. Two of these reporting wires are relatively well known. Your cochlea captures the air-conducted sound of your voice, the audio you hear. Down in your throat, laryngeal mechanoreceptors track the physical stretch of the tissue and the collision of your vocal folds. A third, critically overlooked wiretap sits buried deep inside the inner ear. Right next to the cochlea is the saccule. Millions of years ago, early aquatic animals used the saccule to perceive environmental vibrations through water. In modern humans, it functions to detect the intense, low-frequency bone-conducted vibrations that echo through your skeletal structure when you speak. When those structural vibrations hit the saccule, they create your internal perception of vocal depth. This specific biological feedback is the reason your voice sounds full and rich in your own head, but thin and tinny when you hear it on an audio recording. Attempting to speak powerfully without engaging this structural vibration leaves you flying blind. You end up relying entirely on that thin, air-conducted audio loop to judge your own presence. All of this sensory data feeds into what computational neuroscientists call the DIVA model, a dual control system in the brain. The primary driver is feed-forward control. This is the master architect. It creates a predictive blueprint and smoothly dispatches automatic motor commands right to your mouth and throat. Operating in parallel is feedback control. This acts as the internal inspector. It actively compares the sensory data coming back from your ear and throat against the architect's intended blueprint to catch deviations. When these two systems lose calibration, speech breaks down entirely. The clinical condition of stuttering provides a clear view of a compromised surveillance network. Stuttering originates from a paranoid feedback inspector. An over-reliance on a faulty auditory loop tricks the brain into detecting false acoustic errors. These false auditory alarms violently interrupt the feed-forward architect. The motor system is forced to repeatedly hit the reset button, trapping the speaker in disfluent blocks and repetitions. We see a similar sabotage in Parkinson's disease. Patients often develop a severely uncalibrated auditory map. Their brain fails to suppress the sound of their own voice, falsely perceiving a normal conversational volume as shouting. To correct this imagined error, the motor system unconsciously scales their volume down to a whisper. In both cases, the mechanical equipment of the vocal tract works perfectly. The sabotage occurs because the sensory error maps misinterpret the incoming data, actively suppressing the speaker's fluency and volume. So, how do you reclaim control when your own neurological surveillance system is generating false alarms? You exploit a biological loophole called sensory weighting. When one stream of feedback becomes unreliable, the central nervous system can mathematically shift its reliance toward more stable sensors. You can consciously hack your own audio-vocal loop. Instead of listening to the sound of your voice out in the room, you shift your entire focus to the tactile sensations, the bone-conducted vibration in your facial bones, and the physical stretch in your larynx. By intentionally prioritizing this seismic, saccular feedback, you bypass the paranoid auditory inspector. Over time, engaging this specific physical sensation forces neuroplastic changes that physically rewire your brain's internal error maps. This exact mechanism of sensory recalibration forms the foundation of highly successful clinical interventions, from resonant voice therapy to protocols used to restore conversational volume in Parkinson's patients. The solution to a weak or hesitant voice was never to push harder, it was to change which biological wiretap you were paying attention to. True vocal power doesn't come from violently forcing air out of your lungs. It comes from tuning into the body's hidden resonance, bypassing the false alarms, and finally trusting the feed-forward system to execute the plan.